1,000 software engineer salaries. 12 months of compensation data. Everything from base salary to bonus to RSUs to total compensation packages. Engineers at Google, at Amazon, at Microsoft, at mid-size companies, at startups, at firms you have never heard of. Junior engineers, mid-level engineers, senior engineers, staff, principal, distinguished. 1,000 data points, pulled, cleaned, and analyzed the same way you would analyze any large dataset at work. And what came out on the other side was not what I expected. Because the relationship between salary and wealth across 1,000 real engineer careers does not work the way most people assume it does. The engineers building the most wealth are not always the highest earners. The engineers struggling the most financially are not always the lowest earners. And the single variable that predicted financial outcomes better than salary, better than company, better than location, is something almost nobody is measuring. In this video, I am going to walk you through exactly what the data showed, the salary ranges across experience levels, and what the numbers actually look like when you account for taxes and cost of living. The wealth gap between engineers at the same salary, and what is actually causing it. And the one metric that separates engineers who build real wealth from engineers who stay stuck, regardless of how much they earn. 1,000 salaries analyzed. Here is what I found. Before we get into the data, I want to tell you why I started this analysis in the first place. Because it did not start with a spreadsheet. It started with a conversation. A senior engineer, 7 years of experience, total compensation of $180,000 per year, asked me a question that I could not stop thinking about. He said, "I earn more than I ever thought I would at this age. I have been promoted twice. My salary has almost tripled since my first job. And I genuinely do not understand why I do not feel financially ahead." He was not broke. He had savings. He had a 401k. But the feeling he described of earning significantly more than most people and still feeling like financial freedom was somehow far away, that feeling did not match the income number. And when I started asking other engineers the same question, I found that feeling everywhere. The 26-year-old at a FAANG company earning $140,000, confused about why the bank account never seems to grow the way the salary suggests it should. The 32-year-old staff engineer at a mid-size company, earning $160,000, wondering why colleagues who earn less seem equally stuck. The 38-year-old principal engineer, total comp over $200,000, still feeling like one bad month could create real stress. Same feeling, different salaries, different companies, different cities. And that pattern, that disconnect between what engineers earn and what they actually build, is exactly what I wanted to understand. So I went to the data. And the data, as it always does, told a story that emotion alone never could. Let me walk you through what 1,000 engineer salaries actually look like. Finding 1, the salary ranges are wider than most engineers realize, and experience level explains less than you think. Across 1,000 data points here is what the compensation landscape looks like by experience level. 0 to 2 years experience. Base salary range $48,000 to $95,000. Wide range. Entry level at a small company versus entry level at a FAANG company can be a $50,000 difference on day one. 3 to 5 years experience. Base salary range $78,000 to $145,000. The spread widens further. A mid-level engineer at a regional firm versus a mid-level engineer at Google are living in completely different financial realities, despite having identical experience levels on paper. 6 to 10 years experience. Base salary range $105,000 to $190,000. Senior engineers. This is where total compensation packages start becoming complex. RSUs, annual bonuses, profit sharing, base salary alone stops telling the full story. 10 years plus. Base salary range $130,000 to $280,000. Staff, principal, distinguished levels. The range here is so wide that 2 engineers with the same title and same years of experience can have a $150,000 difference in total compensation. Now here is the first thing this data reveals that surprises most people. Within every single experience bracket, the engineers in the top 20% of earners were not consistently the top 20% of wealth builders. Salary predicted income. It did not predict wealth. Finding 2, the wealth gap inside the same salary band is the most important story in the data. I want to focus specifically on engineers earning between $100,000 and $130,000 per year. A common salary band. Hundreds of engineers in the dataset fall here. And within this single salary band, the annual wealth being built ranged from $4,000 per year to $41,000 per year. Same salary. 10 times difference in wealth building. 4,000 versus 41,000, from engineers earning within $30,000 of each other. When I dug into what was driving that gap, 3 variables explained almost everything. First variable, location and state tax. Engineers in zero income tax states, Washington, Texas, Florida, were keeping an average of $8,000 to $11,000 more per year than engineers in California or New York at identical salaries. Over a career, this single variable compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Second variable, savings rate consistency. Engineers in the high wealth building group had an average savings rate of 22%, maintained consistently regardless of income changes. Engineers in the low wealth building group had an average savings rate of 7%, and that rate did not meaningfully improve as income grew. The rate stayed low because lifestyle expanded to absorb every raise. Third variable, investment timing. Engineers who started investing within the first year of their career, even small amounts, had dramatically higher net worth by mid-career than engineers who waited until they felt ready or felt like they had enough to invest. The ones who waited consistently reported waiting an average of 4.2 years before making their first investment. 4 years of compound growth permanently lost. Finding 3, the one metric that predicted financial outcomes better than anything else. After running correlations across every variable in the dataset, salary, company size, location, experience level, education, total compensation, one metric had the strongest relationship with actual wealth built over a career. Not salary, not company prestige, not bonus size, savings rate, measured consistently over time. Specifically, the gap between income growth rate and lifestyle growth rate. Engineers whose lifestyle grew slower than their income built wealth at every salary level. Engineers whose lifestyle grew at the same rate as their income stayed financially flat at every salary level, regardless of how impressive their compensation package looked on paper. This is the finding that reframes everything, because it means the question is never how much are you earning. The question is always how wide is the gap between what comes in and what goes out, and is that gap growing or shrinking as your career progresses? 1,000 salaries analyzed. That gap is the entire story. So the data has shown us 3 things clearly. Salary alone does not build wealth. The wealth gap inside the same salary band is enormous. And the single metric that matters most is the gap between income growth and lifestyle growth. Now here is how you actually use this information. The first step is to calculate your real savings rate, not the one you estimate, the actual number. Most engineers who I have spoken to estimate their savings rate at around 15 to 20%. When they actually calculate it, the real number is usually 7 to 11%. The gap between estimated and actual is almost always in comfort creep, the spending that happens in categories too small to feel significant individually. Here is how to calculate your real savings rate right now. Take everything that went into investments and savings accounts last month, 401k contribution, index fund deposits, high-yield savings additions, everything. Divide that by your gross monthly salary. Multiply by 100. That percentage is your real savings rate. If it is below 15%, you now know exactly why the wealth building feels slower than the income suggests it should be. And you have a specific number to work with, not a feeling, a number. Engineers fix numbers. We are not great at fixing feelings. Now you have a number. The second step is to apply the income growth gap rule to your next raise. This comes directly from the data. The engineers building the most wealth were not the ones earning the most. They were the ones where income consistently grew faster than lifestyle. Here is the rule in its simplest form. Every time your income increases by 10%, your investment contribution increases by at least 6% of that raise. Automatically, before your lifestyle adjusts. Not after. Before. If your salary goes from $100,000 to $110,000, $10,000 increase, $600 of that per year goes directly into automated investment before you change a single lifestyle decision. The remaining $9,400 spend freely. Upgrade what genuinely matters. Enjoy the reward. But that $600 invested automatically widens the gap between income and lifestyle growth. And that gap, compounded over a career, is the entire difference between the $4,000 wealth builders and the $41,000 wealth builders in the dataset. Same salary band, completely different outcome. The third step is to set a career savings rate target and treat it like a system requirement. In software, we set performance requirements before we build systems, not after. Response time under 200 milliseconds. Uptime above 99.9%. Error rate below 0.1%. These are not suggestions. They are requirements the system must meet. Your savings rate needs the same treatment. Not a goal, a requirement. Based on the data, here is what I recommend as minimum savings rate requirements by career stage. 0 to 3 years experience, minimum 15% savings rate. You are early. Time is your biggest asset. Protect the compounding window. 3 to 7 years experience, minimum 20% savings rate. Income is growing. Lifestyle pressure is increasing. The rate must grow faster than the pressure. 7 years plus, minimum 25% savings rate. Senior compensation is significant. This is where the real wealth building acceleration happens, but only if the rate is protected from lifestyle inflation. Write your current career stage savings rate requirement down right now. Then compare it to the real savings rate you calculated in step 1. That gap between your requirement and your reality is your next system to fix. And now you know exactly what to build. 1,000 salaries. One finding that explained almost everything. The gap between income growth and lifestyle growth is the entire game. Not salary, not company, not location. The gap. And here is what I want you to do before this video ends. Calculate your real savings rate right now. Not later. Right now. Take last month's total invested amount. Divide by gross salary. Multiply by 100. Write that number down. Then ask yourself honestly, is that number growing as my income grows? Or is it staying flat while my lifestyle absorbs every raise? That answer, more than any other single piece of information, tells you exactly where you stand. The next video takes this data one step further, because knowing your savings rate is step 1. Building the automated system that protects it regardless of what life throws at you is step 2. That system, built specifically for the way engineers think and live, is what the next video covers completely. It is already up. Link is right above this screen. 1,000 data points analyzed so you do not have to. That is what this channel is here for. Real data. Real numbers. Built for the way an engineering mind actually works. If that is what you have been looking for, you are in the right place. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.